feel like I'm in gym class all over again because in this Roll for Crit preview, we're taking a look at Challengers from Z-Man Games. This game, you will lead a team in order to try and keep possession of the flag in order to earn points. Though instead of you playing with your classmates, you will be playing alongside krakens, aliens, vampires, and a giant rubber ducky, all in the name of gaining control of that flag, gaining fans, and I guess passing gym class in a way. Let's see if this game can keep possession of your attention. The game in this video was not provided to Roll for Crit by its creators or publishers. Roll for Crit was not paid, sponsored, or contacted by the game's creators or publishers to make this video. Challengers will have you fight against each other over different areas. Depending on player count, there'll be multiple maps that you'll be sitting across and moving to depending on the rounds. But for now, let's just stick with this one place. You will start wherever your starting cards tells you to sit. So in this case, for round one, these two players will be sitting at the green area. Now, you will all start off with a similar deck of cards that will all be the same. However, each round, you're going to be adding new cards from these decks. Now, depending on what round you're in, you will be adding from either deck A, B, or C. So for round one, if you look at these cards, they will tell you what cards you'll be adding from. So for round one, you'll be taking from A, and if you can't guess, A is not as strong as B, which is weaker than C. During this deck phase, you're going to draw 5 cards from the deck you're supposed to be drafting from, in which you'll be taking 2 of these cards. If you don't like them, you can discard them in order to draw 5 more, but you can only do that once. After looking through cards, choosing 2 to add to your deck, you're then going to discard the remaining ones. Now, before we enter the match phase, at the end of the deck phase, you're going to be able to look through your deck and remove any cards from it permanently from the game. After everyone has done so, you now begin the match phase. You'll be playing against an opponent on the opposite side of your field, with other players playing on different mats. Now, to determine who's first, the person who has the highest trophy will be the first to gain control of the flag. However, in this case, such as the first round, where no one has any trophies, you're going to flip this with the light side going to that side, dark side over there. So for now, let's say it came up with light side up. They're going to take the top card of their deck and have it so it is currently in possession. The other player is now going to flip cards from the top of their deck until they match the value of the other card. After capturing the flag, you're going to actually stack your cards such that only the top card is showing, meaning that this card, while it was able to beat a 2 together, now only a power 1 is holding onto the flag. Cards that lost possession of the flag will be added to the bench in an empty slot. This will keep going until one of 2 outcomes occur. A, you run out of bench slots. Keep in mind, if you have doubles like there, whether they came out the same turn or later on, are going to go to the same slot. But let's say we just kept flipping for whatever reason, and we were unable to add this card into a bench slot, then we would lose the game. This is a newcomer, which would have gone there, but you get the idea. The other way that you may lose is, let's say it was your turn, and this was the situation. You flipped over your last card, you can't flip over any more cards to take the flag back, then you would also lose. So in this case, this player would take the top trophy, do not look at it, then you will collect all the cards that you used in order to reform your deck, and then once everyone is finished, move on to the next round. With this player now moving on to the red mat, and this one staying at the green mat for the entire game. Now, the other thing to note here is that as you move throughout the game, you'll be drawing from stronger decks, with some of them giving you a choice. For example, in the third round, everyone can either draw from the A deck, where they can get 2 cards, or from the B deck, where they can only get 1 card. You will repeat this process until you go through all 7 rounds, and after the 7th round, you will look at all your points from trophies, as well as any cards that give you fans, which are just basic little victory points. And the 2 people who have the most points will go head-to-head in one final match, with the winner of that match being declared the winner. Now, there are 2 main sub-variant rules that you need to know about. First, for 2-player, it's pretty simple. You will go head-to-head, obviously staying in the same area, but when you gain trophies, they will be placed face up on your board, as at any time you have 11 more points than your opponent, you automatically win. You do not go through the entire game. You also will not do that extra match after round 7. You'll simply total up your points and see who has the most fans. For any odd number player counts, including solo, you're going to be using this robot deck. In above solo, this will just represent an extra player that someone may go up against. Usually you'll give them the card that doesn't move, but for solo mode, you'll be competing against this deck similar to the 2-player rules. You can also up the difficulty by adding in special cards for the robot deck, including some that are designed just for solo mode. The robot player deck will not add in any cards, however, many of their cards will increase in power as you progress to later rounds. I enjoy lots of video games and tend to compare them when I feel it's right to when the board games I review them. And definitely in this case, I feel that Challengers is the auto battler in board gaming. This is not going to be one where all your decisions are going to come mostly during the head-to-head phase. Yes, there are cards that you look at the top 2 cards of your deck, maybe put one underneath, but they're not the main focus. Rather, your decision-making will be most important during the deck phase when you're going to be adding and removing cards from your deck. This is where you're going to decide how your deck's going to perform, what's its style, and then depending on how well you build your deck, and of course, some luck in terms of the order of the cards, you're going to be able to hope and gain control of that flag and keep possession of it in order to get the most points. That isn't a bad thing in and of itself. I say this more because I feel a lot of auto battlers at least have a bit more of a negative stigma to them in terms of being more shovelware style games or something filled with lots of microtransactions. Here, first of all, it's one big purchase. It's not going to nickel and dime you for small purchases. But this isn't one that you're going to just mindlessly tap on your phone and get to later. You are going to be playing with friends, and I think that's where a lot of the fun's going to come from. The way you shuffle back and forth, it's going to fit more that tournament scene that you just playing any kind of game in a tournament. You played this match, then this match, see how you do. But you also, it's going to be curious because everyone's evolving with their deck. So even if you're not making choices, it becomes curious like, all right, I played you last time and you focused a lot on just a lot of big number creatures. Let's see, where did that card come from? Okay, this is what changing up a little bit. Things that you get to see how everyone strategies evolve or pivot in some cases. It really feels like the enjoyment's going to come from the crafting and just seeing it go into action rather than the strategizing of changing your tactics, moving around during the challenging battle itself. Now, this is going to be the kind of thing where for some people, they might think, oh, this is great. I can focus on the part of like when I play a regular game, I like the deck building and just see how it goes. When other people might just say, I'm basically playing the card game war where none of my choices matter. There is going to be some of both here. There are going to be moments, depending on what cards you get, where basically you just feel like you're just top decking and just hoping for the best. Other times, the cards you pick, you can get cards that reward you when they lose flags, when they gain flags, when they're on the bench. So you're thinking about, oh, I've got this strategy that, oh, this card gives me more attack power with 1 power cards, and this card is a 1 power card but gets more power if there's 1 power cards on the bench. If this feels like you're just playing war, I think you should make sure and give it another look because I do think the crafting part was a lot of fun. Granted, there are going to be moments where you just don't get nearly as many of the cool cards, and then it is going to lean more towards that war style gameplay aspect. And I will say, though, one thing that someone joked about while we were playing is that many times when I'm teaching game, one of the first jokes is usually like, and whoever has the most points wins. I know, inventive. It's just something you're usually used to how you decide. Here, yes, points technically point you towards winning, but you don't need the most because after the very last match, last 2 players who have the most points win. And regardless of how many points they have, one person could be slaughtering and won every match and the other one just has a middling. If he beats them in the final match, they get the winners. I do want to talk about the robot deck. This is how you fight solo as well as playing with an odd number of people. And it's definitely one of those, at least for me personally, I find it to be serviceable. I'm not the craziest fan because unlike playing against someone else whose deck will change a little bit, and I'm very curious to see what they do, the robot deck's really only increasing power because the cards get more power for each round. So it's just, okay, now those cards are going to be worth 4. Now they're going to be worth 5. Now they're going to be worth 6. You can add some cards in the beginning that make things interesting, but once you've seen them, you know that's how that deck runs. So honestly, for me personally, I probably, if I'm going to bring this out again, it's going to be when I have an even number of people. The other thing that I didn't notice, which was I don't know what to do about it. Like the robot deck is like, oh, just play even number. It's just the best player count. There are cards I feel that are better than others. And that's not the worst thing in the world. But I did notice that for myself and a couple other players, they learned that the being able to pitch your hand, put it aside if you don't see cards you like and drawing a new one, basically meant you get to choose out of 10 cards rather than 5. And they tended to use that to just dig through the decks rather than coming up with a weird eclectic team of like a T-Rex and a rubber duck. They really like, I know what cards I want. This is what I'm going to go for. And I wish there was a way to somehow weaken that. I don't know, because if you have too many different cards, your bench fills up too quickly. So part of the game is making sure you get doubles to give some, not just consistently, but making sure you don't lose in just a few turns. But at the same time, for the people who really know the decks, they're just going to dig through those exact cards that they need and just get a really strong deck. I don't know whether like you have to pick a card from the first hand, something of that nature. I just wish there's a way to weaken that just a little bit so you do have to go with a bit more of a crazy build rather than being able to really design surprisingly efficient decks regardless of how many games are going on. But of course, that's going to be more with the players you're with. So if you have someone who's always really good at going full efficiency, and whether they're like a really like competitive magic commander style, maybe you want to be a bit more careful. If you have people who enjoy like random silliness and fun, they're going to have a lot of fun here just making up weird teams. And of course, because a lot of it comes from the building and not feeling bad because you didn't know you had to play on curve, they're going to have a lot of fun being able to make these fun little teams and then just flipping and seeing how things go. And of course, like I said, the points do matter, but there will come a point when it's just you and me, winner take all. So while I do think there are some red flags here, especially for those who look for a game where decision making and the choices you make, the strategies are unbelievably core, where you can like turn on a dime and change what you're doing and react to your opponent right away, you're probably going to hate half the game. But for those of you who sort of just like maybe a bit of chaos and have the nature of just, let's see where this takes us, I think you're going to have a lot of fun. This isn't just pure chaos and just being blind and just hoping for the best. You are going to be crafting your deck with the cards, being able to draft extra and stronger cards and maybe get a bit too good at making your deck efficient. But whatever the case may be, when you're finished and ready to go, you're going to just slap it down, look at your opponent and say, let's do this. You're going to go back and forth, maybe have some choices being able to mess around with your deck or at least the bench, and hopefully you'll be the one ending up with the flag in possession. And the cards themselves aren't just simple number values. There are ways for you to get different keywords, such as powering up the bench, powering up when they gain or lose the flag, enough there that, like I said, it's not simply just I have deck with big numbers, but you do feel rewarded when your cards come out in the right order and the synergies work out correctly. So overall, while I do think that this could definitely be a game that some people despise, I do think for some people, it is one that they'll want to plant their flag on. Crits and misses for challengers. Crits. The deck building phase is where you make your choices, and I think they did a good job of giving you a lot of agency here. There are tons of fun cards for you to pick from, and as you progress through the rounds, you're going to get a decision of which value cards you pull from. You may get less cards, but be able to get a stronger card, but maybe you want more cards from the weaker style cards, not just because you want more, but also you want more duplicates, as that is rewarding when it comes to filling up the bench. Combine that with the fact as you can remove any number of cards from your deck at the end of each phase, means you'll never feel guilty about picking a specific card that didn't work out, or that your deck is getting a bit too bloated. The tournament style gameplay is a lot of fun, and while it may be a little bit annoying to get up and change seats, it's still a lot of fun to play against new players, or once you return against an opponent you've played against before, see how their team has changed. And throw in the fact that this ends in a winner-take-all battle rather than simply just who has the most points, it gives players more space as they're not simply just fighting for first in points, but second place is a viable option towards the path of victory as well. I actually think the two different ways for you to lose actually do a great job of rewarding you during the deck building phase. as obviously you want to build a strong deck and high numbers are important. But because of how the bench works, you can't just simply just have all big cards. You have to try and get some of those duplicates, maybe make some sacrifices here and there. And therefore, you're going to be thinking not just simply, I want all big numbers, but rather, what cards can I keep? What do I have to give up? And maybe how can I try to take advantage and do some synergies while I'm drafting? Misses. The match phase is the opposite of the deck building phase, where you're not going to be making nearly as many choices. Yes, there are cards that may have you look at your deck, or cards that can also remove cards from your bench. Those are not guaranteed to be a part of your deck. And more often than not, I did notice players just saying, let's just keep flipping cards similar to War, and then just depending on the order of our decks, see how things roll out. During the deck building phase, you will have the option of gaining 1 to 2 cards, but if you don't like all of the cards in your hand, you can get rid of them and draw that many cards once in order to hopefully get the card you're looking for. I've noticed those who are a bit more experienced when it comes to card games abuse this a bit too much, as they seem to be able to build really efficient decks, which I think is sort of against the spirit of this game, where you want at least a bit more silliness and randomness going on. I've seen a lot of discussion when this game came up when it comes to luck versus skill. And I will admit, when I first saw this game and heard about the mechanics, it just seemed like way too much luck based than I would like. That all said, it got nominated for a Kenner Spiel, which is why I'm here, which made me like, oh, I gotta play it and review it. And I definitely am leaning a lot more towards skill. Yes, for a lot of people, you're gonna look at that battle phase, which usually is sort of the main component when you think of a board game, and think that you're just playing a game of War. But with everything going on in the deck building phase, the way that you can find certain cards, honestly, a bit too well and craft your deck, you can have a lot of fun there with synergies. And even for, like I said, the top people, just make your deck so efficient that you might as well have chosen the order of the cards. You don't even need to worry about luck. And honestly, I feel it actually needs to be a bit more luck-based, a bit more War in there, in the sense that you shouldn't be able to guarantee, I mean, you can't guarantee what cards you get, especially if other people are drafting them, but I would like to see you forced to get a bit more randomness. There are a few cards in here that say, when played, take a random card from a deck and don't look at it and put it into your deck top or bottom or something. I really like those cards because they added that element of, neither of us know what's going to happen. I just took this card. Let's see what comes. And I wish this had more ways of that going on in there, especially for those probably who have more points, because usually those are the players who've made their deck maybe a bit too efficient. But this could be something that is just bothers me a bit more, and maybe you like the ability to remove as much luck as possible. Let me know your thoughts if you've tried Challenger, and maybe you're excited for the new expansion that was announced. It's its own separate core, but can be mixed with this. Maybe it deals with the problems I have, or maybe it will help those who find this a bit more like War. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching this so far. But for now, I'm Will, and this has been Roll for Crit.